summer camp I work at, every time a camper takes a risk to overcome their fears, something great happens. This could be one more agonizing step up the ladder, as they're only a few feet off the ground at the ropes course. Their crippling fear of heights may be nearly overpowering them, but taking that step shows them that they can do it. The cheers they get from the people below them shows the encouragement they have from their community. And as they arrive safely back on the ground after their daunting journey, they seem to have a better understanding of the world and more trust in God. The same could be said for a camper who does a cartwheel across the log suspended 25 feet up in the air, or a dad who goes upside down on the zip line to prove to his kids that he is in fact the coolest. No matter how big or small a risk may seem to an outsider, it is significant to the person who experienced it. As society is moving in the direction of what is comfortable, we are losing something great that comes with risk and adventure. Risk allows us to discover and overcome our fears. Without it, we become idle. Laziness, fear, and habit begin to rule our lives until we break free. Risk and adventure allow our communities to be strengthened as we experience things together. They allow us to appreciate and get a better understanding of the world around us and the people who call it home. Also, how do you think it would affect your relationship with God if you were to never take risks or go on adventures? I believe risk and adventure gives us a special way of connecting with Him. But what's significant is that we experience these adventures rather than just talking about it. Just talking about it is insignificant compared to being courageous and intentionally taking the steps necessary to step out of what is comfortable and experiencing what life has to offer. As the famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The secret of knowing the most fertile experiences and the greatest joys in life is to live dangerously." Adventure allows us to learn more about ourselves, and it reveals our limits, values, and fears. This year, I got to go on many fun and exciting experiences that helped me learn about myself in new ways. One of my favorite of these experiences was going skydiving, where I learned a lot about myself, but it also left me somewhat confused. The first thing I learned was I was not nearly as nervous as I thought I would be. I honestly wasn't nervous at all, at least until I got about halfway up to altitude. And even then, I was only nervous for a few minutes, but I was mostly just consumed with excitement. The other thing I learned was that I was not nearly as scared as I thought I would be. I honestly never remember being scared, but hours later when I got the pictures back, the look on my face looked terrified. This caused me to realize, why did I have nearly no fear jumping out of a plane? But as a climber, when it comes to lead climbing, sometimes I'm very scared to take a fall. Even though I trust my equipment, my belayer, and I know I am totally safe. Like jumping out of a plane at 10,000 feet, which is a very dangerous activity, compared to taking a fall from just above my clip, even though I've done it for many, many hours before with no mishap or injury ever. I still don't have the answer to many of these questions, but I do know that not all fears are based in reality. Luckily, risk and adventure allow us to discover these fears and work to overcome them. I also learned about myself this year through a trip to Utah with some of my friends. Throughout this trip, I learned about my own limits through extensive hiking. On our first day of the trip, we decided to try to explore as much of Zion National Park as we possibly could, from sunrise to sunset. This meant 13 miles of hiking, including the world-famous Angel's Landing hike. Throughout this day, I reached one of my limits, but I also persevered through another. After a while of hiking and being somewhat out of breath and tired, I began to get dizzy because of a medical condition I have. But I was able to stop and rest so I could continue hiking throughout the day. This helped me realize that not all limits can be ignored. Some of them, we have to let them affect us and stop and rest so we can continue. This also helped me realize that there's a big difference between carelessness and risk. And if we don't take this difference seriously, it can turn into the difference between life and death. Throughout this trip, I also overcame something else that could have been a limit. After that first day of hiking, I and my entire group were exhausted. But we had 4 more days full of hiking on sore, stiff legs. And we didn't let the tiredness stop us because we had more parks to explore. Lastly, on this trip, I learned about my love for the desert as I was in awe of the beauty around me, such as at Bryce Canyon. Throughout this trip, I also learned about my love for all of the fun adventures it can provide. One of the fun adventures was exploring slot canyons. That always has the risk of a flash flood or injury, but they are beautiful in a way no picture can do justice. If I never intentionally took risks and did stuff like that, I would not understand myself in the way I do today. This year, I've been able to learn about my physical and mental limits, my fear of lead climbing and how to overcome it, and about the places and activities I have come to love. Risk and adventure also allow us to learn about the people around us. The last 3 summers, as I've been working at a summer camp leading kids through risk and adventures, we've been helping them better connect with the people around them. The main way we do this is through what we call low ropes activities, which are like team building challenges. These activities push the kids to rely on each other, overcome obstacles, and think outside of the box. Through these activities, the kids risk judgment as they try to do certain maneuvers, or they risk trusting their groups as they're lifted above the ground. But no matter how big or small the risk is, it has the power to bring the group closer together. Another way we bring kids through risk at camp is through the climbing wall and the ropes course. During these activities, the kids have to trust their belayer to keep them safe as they dangle 20 to 30 feet up in the air. And this can be nerve-wracking for anyone, especially, for example, a little kindergartner who's thinking about going off the zip line. But as their entire cabin is standing next to them and cheering them on, it seems a little bit more feasible to step off that platform. And as they do, they seem to have a better understanding of the support and love they have from all the people around them. I have grown much closer to my friends and the people around me through risk and adventure in so many ways. But one of my favorite of these adventures was a last-minute hike I went on earlier this year. For the sake of the embarrassment of the people that went, I'm not going to tell you their names, but I chose a beautiful and somewhat strenuous hiking location in Clear Creek Canyon. This location required crossing a Tyrolean traverse. A Tyrolean traverse could be considered similar to a rope bridge that you have to clip yourself into in order to pull yourself across a fast-moving river. I chose this location when only one of the several people I invited would be able to come. But then last minute, someone else decided to join the group. I chose not to change the location for this person because I thought they would do just as well as they needed to. I wouldn't say I was wrong, but I certainly wouldn't say I was right. Over the course of the hike, there were several close calls with cactus, rocks, cliffs, surprise snow, and someone got stuck on the traverse. Twice. It certainly wasn't a perfect adventure, but it was so much fun. As the 2 of us helped our friend down, all 3 of us were brought so much closer together through laughter, problem solving, and relying on each other in a way only adventure and risk could cause us to. Risk and adventure also have the power to let us experience the world and understand and appreciate it in a new way. But a risk or adventure doesn't have to be out in nature. It could be as simple as going and trying a new restaurant, where you learn about new people and cultures in a new way. Another way you could go on an adventure in the city is by visiting the Rhino Art District in Denver. These alleys are full of beautiful murals and illegal graffiti that can help teach us about the people and art forms around the world that are both hated and loved. These allow us to learn about the people who live in our cities with us. And oftentimes they involve less risk than getting out in nature, as long as you choose your restaurant wisely, if you know what I mean. But they still help us understand the world and the people we share it with. One of my favorite ways, though, of adventuring is by getting out into nature. And this can oftentimes be done through photography. As most photographers would know, when you take a picture, it never quite looks exactly like what you see with your eyes. This could be because the lighting's a little bit off, maybe the focus isn't quite right, or maybe you're too close or too far away. But no matter what, photography helps us focus on the details, appreciating the small perfections in nature. The same could be said for photography is able to show things that you can't see with your naked eyes. This could be, for example, taking a long exposure picture, which can reveal beautiful landscapes and innumerable stars that you can't see with your eyes because it's so dark. When taking pictures, any mistake helps you appreciate the beauty you have around you. And whenever you successfully take a beautiful picture, you're in awe of the world God has created for us. I've come to appreciate the world through rock climbing in a similar way to through photography. Climbing inspires me to notice the small details in the rocks as I try to cling to their surfaces. These small inconsistencies help me get a better understanding of the world and more appreciation for its beauty. But no matter how you choose to experience risk and adventure, whether in the city or out in nature, it is significant that we choose to experience these things rather than just talking about it. Lastly, risk and adventure have the power to bring us closer to God and help us better understand God's power and greatness. This risk and adventure persuade us to put more trust in God and to appreciate His magnificent creation. This is why I believe most camps are found where kids can be in the midst of God's beautiful creation. Some of the best Christ-centered experiences at camp come through risk and adventure. But this could be as simple as answering a Bible-centered question in front of the rest of the cabin, or going off the blob at the beach. No matter how big or small the risk is, God has the power to come closer to the camper through this experience. The most significant risk anyone could choose to take is choosing to accept Christ. Through this, the risk of judgment from the people around you as you proclaim your faith may seem great, but it is far inferior to the significance of choosing faith. This decision helps us be confident in our Savior and helps us rule over the judgment of others. The biggest way I experience God's work in nature is through what I like to call a moment of awe. Awe is defined as a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. And I get this feeling quite often when out in nature. I got this feeling so many times on a trip to Lake Powell with my family over spring break. I got this feeling while out at night looking at the innumerable stars, in awe of God's amazing power to create such an extraordinary universe. I got this feeling during our time on the water, in awe of God's creativity to create such beautiful, clear, and deep water and the amazing rock formations that broke the surface. I most got this feeling when exploring a slot canyon at Lake Powell that took a boat and a paddleboard to get to. When I was here, the incredible, towering, flowing walls were amazing. And I left this canyon with scratches, scrapes, aching feet, but a heart filled with amazement at God's beautiful creation. A risk and adventure allows us to become closer to God and get a better understanding of His amazing, incomprehensible power. Risk and adventure can bring so much to us, both as individuals and as a society. But we must choose to take on risk and adventure and be people who intentionally experience that. We must do our best to live in the moment, making the best out of every single day we are given, refusing to be idle or given to laziness and fear. But I'm not the only one that realizes this. Tagore, a 19th century poet, once said, "Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it." Similarly, Charles S. Houston, an American physician and mountain climber, said, "We must in all activities push to do more difficult and challenging things, but not to beat our fellows, rather to find ourselves." And lastly, C.S. Lewis said, "Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at its testing point." If you were to take only one thing from me today, it would be my wish for you to live life to the fullest. This means going out and going on adventures rather than just talking about it. To be courageous and try new things. And to pursue risk even in the face of failure. Because everyone will fail. The difference is, will you let that stop you?